When David lost his sight in a terrible accident, his wife promised to stand by him forever. But what she didn't know was, David could still see. Every glance at her phone. Every secret smile at someone else. Every lie. For weeks, he played the helpless husband, watching her slip further into the arms of another man. And the night she came home smelling of his cologne was the night David's world finally fell apart. Like and subscribe, comment where you are watching from, as we dive into this exciting drama. David Marshall had built his life from the ground up. From a small-town boy with nothing but a sketchbook and ambition, he had become one of the most respected architects in the city. His projects were featured in magazines, his name carried weight in boardrooms, and his bank account reflected it. But for all his success, David had one lingering fear, that the woman he loved, Clara, didn't truly love him back. She was beautiful, charming, and always perfectly dressed, but sometimes her eyes lingered too long on luxury watches in shop windows, and her smile brightened just a little more when his business associates praised his earnings. Then came the accident. A reckless driver had swerved into his lane one rainy evening, leaving his car dented and his body bruised. The doctors declared him lucky, except for a supposed injury to his optic nerve. The diagnosis, partial blindness that could worsen. It was then the idea took root. What if he pretended the blindness was total? What if he saw how Clara treated him when she believed he could no longer see, no longer protect his wealth, his image, or himself? When he told her the news, she gasped dramatically, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh, David! My poor darling! You can't see anything." "No," he said softly, masking the truth. "The doctors say it's permanent." She hugged him, but it was the kind of hug that felt stiff, her arms around him but her mind elsewhere. The first few days, Clara played the devoted wife. She guided him to the dining table, read the newspaper aloud, and reminded him where the salt was kept. But David noticed little things, like how her tone grew impatient if he asked her to repeat herself, or how she sighed heavily when he asked for help with his clothes. One evening, she served dinner in silence. David, feeling for his fork, accidentally knocked over his water glass. The liquid spread across the tablecloth. "David! You have to be more careful," she snapped, yanking the glass away. "I can't be cleaning up after you all the time." Her words stung, but David kept his expression blank. That night, lying in bed, he stared at the ceiling, unseen by her, or so she thought, and realized this was going to hurt more than he had imagined. Because now, the test had begun. The days turned into weeks. David played his role flawlessly, the helpless, blind husband who relied on Clara for everything. What Clara didn't know was that David's eyesight had fully recovered weeks ago. He could see every flicker of annoyance, every sideways glance, and every secret she thought was safe. It started with her phone. She used to leave it lying on the kitchen counter, but now it never left her side. When she received messages, she would tilt the screen away from him, forgetting that he could see the glow reflected in the window. One night, David sat in the living room pretending to listen to an audiobook through his headphones. In reality, the headphones weren't even connected. He heard her soft voice in the hallway, whispering into the phone. "Yes. I can't tonight." He's awake. A pause. "I told you, he's blind, but I can't risk it." Her giggle, sharp, unkind, cut through him like a blade. David clenched his fists. His chest felt tight, but he forced his breathing to stay slow, steady. He had to see just how far she'd go. Soon, the late nights began. Clara would dress up in her most flattering dresses, spritz on the perfume he had once bought her in Paris, and say, "I'm going to see Sandra, she's having a rough time." The first time, David nodded silently. The second time, he asked if he could come along. She gave him a look of pity laced with irritation. "It's a girls' night, David. You wouldn't enjoy it." That evening, after she left, David quietly followed. He moved slowly, knowing she wouldn't expect it. At the corner cafe, he saw her, not with Sandra, but with a tall, broad-shouldered man in an expensive suit. They leaned close over the table, laughing, her hand brushing his arm. David's throat tightened. He turned away before she could spot him, walking back to the house in the dark, his footsteps echoing in the empty streets. The next morning, Clara was all smiles, humming as she prepared coffee. "Sleep well?" she asked. "Yes," David lied. "Better than I have in a long time." Inside, though, the truth was settling in his chest like ice. And then came the breaking point. A week later, Clara returned home late again, but this time, she wasn't careful. She came into the living room still laughing from something the man outside had said. David sat motionless in his chair, eyes fixed forward as though he couldn't see her smudged lipstick or the faint cologne on her dress that wasn't his. She didn't even notice the tear that slipped down his cheek. David had seen enough. Weeks of watching Clara's betrayal had burned something cold and unshakable into his heart. The pretending was over. And if she thought she could walk away from this unscathed, she was wrong. An opportunity came sooner than expected. Clara's birthday was approaching, and she invited her closest friends, the ones who had always fawned over David's wealth but whispered about his tragedy behind his back. David insisted on hosting the dinner at home. On the night of the party, the house was warm with chatter and the clink of wine glasses. Clara floated between guests, radiant in a red dress that David now recognized was chosen for another man's eyes. He sat quietly in his chair, his sunglasses on, looking every bit the blind husband she had grown so comfortable dismissing. Halfway through dinner, Clara's friend, the tall man from the cafe, arrived. She hadn't expected David to notice, but he could see the flush in her cheeks, the sparkle in her eyes as she introduced him as just an old acquaintance. David waited until the laughter was at its loudest before he stood up. The room went silent. Clara blinked at him, startled. "David, what are you?" He reached up slowly and took off his sunglasses. The room gasped. His eyes were steady, sharp, and seeing. "Funny thing about being blind," David began, his voice calm but cutting through the air. "People forget to hide who they really are. They think you can't see the lipstick smudged after they come home late. They think you can't see the way they touch someone else's hand in a cafe. They think you can't see betrayal." Clara's smile faltered. "David, this isn't." "Don't lie," he interrupted, his tone still calm, but colder. "I've watched you. For weeks. While you whispered into the phone. While you told me you were with friends. While you humiliated the man you vowed to stand beside." The tall man shifted uncomfortably under the weight of the stairs around the table. Clara's friends avoided her eyes. David stepped away from the table, his voice rising just enough for everyone to hear. "I was never blind, Clara. I wanted to see if the woman I married loved me or just the security I gave her. Now I know the answer." He pulled an envelope from his pocket and tossed it onto the table in front of her. "The divorce papers are signed. You can take whatever you came here for and leave. Just know it wasn't my sight you destroyed, it was my trust." For a moment, she looked like she might fight back, but the room was silent, every eye fixed on her. Her friend quietly stood, muttered something about needing to go, and walked out, leaving her alone. David turned to the guests and gave a small nod. "Please, enjoy the rest of the evening. This is the last time Clara will be hosting here." And with that, he walked out, not looking back. For the first time in months, he was no longer pretending, and the weight of her betrayal no longer chained him to the past. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like and subscribe, as it will help grow this channel.